Okay, welcome back. This is the video that deals with the data representation and the statistical analysis. Two crucially important parts of your project. You cannot score a high-level project without doing this section well. And if you think about it, everything's been leading up to this specific section. This is where it's like we're presenting the answers to the questions that we've posed, which are part of our investigation. So you've got the introduction, which basically goes into the kind of project design. What am I investigating? Here's the background theory to what I'm investigating. Here's the location. I'm going to tell you all about my location. I've got a comparative context as well, so I can compare my location to the comparative context, and that can help me to come up with my hypothesis on what I might find in my location. So you're setting up the rationale for the investigation. The methods is I've got these sub questions, I need to answer them. Here's how I'm going to collect the data that will give me the answers to my sub questions to some degree. Yeah, it won't give you the full answer, but it will help in some way, shape, or form. That gives you some raw data, and then with that raw data, you visually and numerically communicate to the reader what the results of your investigation were. Okay, and that's the purpose of this particular section. All right, so let's get through it. So just to give you an overview of what I'm going to be going through, the importance of a range of data presentation methods in this, and the importance of the different kinds of presentation methods that you utilized. You can see there I've put higher level with an exclamation mark. You need to be aiming for those higher level statistical or data representation methods if you're looking to score a higher level project, which I'm assuming all of you are. Using ArcGIS as well. So we're going to come into that just basically to highlight the importance of this. It is, use of ArcGIS is covered in a separate video, just because I'll have to take you through the methodology of using ArcGIS and then what you need to do when you're collecting your data so that you can actually use ArcGIS for, I guess, showing your methods where you're going to be taking the data from, and also displaying your results spatially, essentially, which is another way of unlocking a high level mark. Then it goes into the importance of statistical analysis, so the calculations that you're going to do on your raw data, where we observe trends, differences, patterns, and then again, making sure that you're looking to use some of those higher level statistical tests. All right. So, and that's to say as well that that's not the sum total of what you need to do in this section. This section is worth 24 marks. Yeah. So this is part one of this section, which is just kind of getting the basics covered. There'll be a part two to this section, which is where we go through synthesis, like what the data says, how we write about our data and what we found, and then how that leads on to linking to the wider theory that you've already looked at in your literature review, and then how you can push that down into a well-written conclusion about what the answer to your sub-question is. Now, that's essentially what the first part is, what we're going to deal with in this video here. So it's turning your raw data into something like into a visual, essentially, so the trends and patterns can be visually identified. It's to perform calculations to determine the statistical significance of your data, like what have you found out, and is it statistically significant? So establishing causal links or the strength of correlation or something to do with that. And it's to determine whether or not you can accept or reject a hypothesis that you might come up with. So some of you might have gone down the route of creating an alternative and a null hypothesis, and then you can get nice and technical and nice and scientific by saying, oh, we can, statistically speaking, we can reject the null hypothesis to a 99% degree of confidence based on the correlation coefficient that Spearman's rank has generated. Yeah, that's kind of standard technical terminology that you would put in one of these sections. Right. So first things first, your data presentation. The mark scheme actually outlines that you need a range of data presentation methods. Yeah. So there's multiple ways that you can present both quantitative and qualitative data and how it can be presented. I'm going to show you some resources that you can use to try and find out what your options are. Yeah, because that is step one. What are my options? I've got this raw data. I've done something like an EQS, an environmental quality survey. It's given me some numbers or a number, which is a score. What on earth can I do with that? How can I present that? Yeah. So I've got two links included in here, and I'm going to take you through a link as well. We're going to go back to the good old Field Studies Council, which is a which is a great resource for every single aspect of your project. So I'm not going to click on these links, but as you can see, when you hover over these links, it will take you to the relevant websites. For me, I've already got them open. So I'll show you the Field Studies Council website first. So again, it all lines up quite nicely. So I've stuck on the low energy coastline project, so you can see the tabs up here. They will go through how to find out what options are available to you. So beach profile, you're looking at something like that as a presentation method. You've got some bar charts there. You've got some GIS there. You've got some oh God, I can't remember what they are. Divided bar charts. There we go. And again, you've got some sort of GIS there as well, so that would count as GIS. So you can see there's an image, and this must be where the investigation took place here and here, and you can see the different calculations that have been done, or the different data that's been done as well. You've got a histogram here. You've got box and whisker there. So it outlines some of the potential options for the particular types of data that you've got. So if you're struggling to decide, just use this, like use it. It will help you. The other thing that's really useful as well is the Royal Geographical Society have created a student guide to the A-level independent investigation. And if you scroll right down, right down, right down, what you'll see here is you've got downloads for the different sections. Yeah. So one of the things that you can do is section 3, a guide to data presentation there. So you just click that link there, you can see, and it'll say download like that, and you can download the guide for your data presentation section. And this again goes through some of your options here for data presentation. It outlines them all here like this. So downloading those things there again will be very useful to you to um, look at ways that you can present certain types of data. So if you download something and it looks like, oh, my data looks like that. It's not the same investigation, but my data looks a little bit like that. Maybe I could try presenting my data on a choropleth map, because it lends itself quite nicely to doing that. Another thing that students find this really useful for is that, maybe you've got some qualitative data, which is essentially just words, and you don't have a number that you can turn into a chart or a picture or something like that. That's absolutely fine. This is a really useful guide presenting qualitative data. So some people have done interviews as part of their data collection, which is a perfectly reasonable technique. It's quite difficult to do statistical tests on interviews. Yeah. So things like quotation banks, flow diagrams, mind maps, that kind of thing. There you can get some GIS here, yeah, from snippets of things that people have said when you're interviewing them as part of your questionnaire. Word clouds, very, very popular method. Yeah, and they are again very useful to pick out the main things that people are saying. So it's a really good resource, the RGS website. Really, really is a great resource, and we'll come back to that when we look at the statistical analysis. The other one as well, which is included in the links, is this one here, the Barcelona Field Studies Centre website. Um, Brilliant for your data presentation stuff. And one of the main benefits of this site is that if you are someone who doesn't like using Excel and struggles to use Excel, this website creates a lot of the charts for you. All you've got to do is punch in the numbers. Yeah. So, uh, let's say we take something like a bipolar chart or a box plot and box and whisker. So we'll go through this one here. So let's say I did a transact and I did 10 different, at each point I did 10 sediment samples. So let's put 10. Oops. 10 there. So there you go. And I want to maybe I've done two transects, and maybe I'm doing the roundness index, or I'm doing the length of the longest axis, length of the a-axis. I can compare both of these. So what I will do, let's say I'll just do this quickly now. Okay, so I filled in the numbers there. So you can see from the raw data already, like it looks as though there's loads more variation here than here, but you would never do a data presentation method that is just, here's the numbers, there you go, work it out for yourself. You've got to visually show what the data is showing, okay? So we'll go for this one here, a horizontal, like this, and then all that you do Sorry, and then all that you do is press open box plot just like this. And there you go. It's created your box plot for you. Let me just drag that over. Now, as you can see, we already established, didn't we? Set one, set two. It's a visual representation of where there's more variety. Yeah, more variety in the data set. So anything where you're looking to show more variety in the data set, this is a really good visual for you to put. As you can see, it's got your minimum, your maximum, your interquartiles there, your median. So it's a brilliant tool. Okay, and then it's got on here, along here, you can identify any outliers, let's say. So really, really good tool, and it's as you can see, it's not taking me very long to plot that at all. Obviously, on this, you can only do it for two data sets. Excel would allow you to do it for more data sets. So what you would do is you just have to kind of customize it a little bit more. All right, but really useful website, particularly for things like your kite diagrams as well. So this one's a really good one. So anyone who's done, there you go. So some of you might have done some um, investigations on species distribution in some degree, or anything else, something like that, where there's different things that you're observing at different points along a transect. A kite diagram's a really good one to do. But the main thing I wanted to show you for that is that obviously it creates it for you. It makes the job of data presentation really easy, but also, there we go, I'll just show you this again. It just shows you all of your potential options as well. Yeah, so a project that has a good range, so you can see there's tons here. A project that has a good range, so you can your word cloud creator at the bottom there. That's a really useful tool. Is really, really important, which we'll come on to. Okay, so that's your data presentation sites that are useful to you. Okay, so obviously part of deciding on your data presentation techniques is thinking what's appropriate to my investigation. Like, what are you trying to show the reader with your data? Are you trying to show like variation in a data set? In which case, box plots are a really good one to do. Or do you just want to show the average? Yeah. So if you're just wanting to highlight the average and compare different averages, you're going to choose a different method. Yeah. And that's completely up to you. This is again the independent side of this investigation. So you've got to think, what do I want to show? And is this the best way to show what's going on with my data? Or will it hide things? Yes, you've got to be able to justify yourself. And remember that your raw data can be presented in multiple ways. Each way will show something different. So I'll give you an example of that. So let's say a few of you might do an environmental quality survey or an environmental quality assessment. Yeah. Now this will generate you a score. Yeah. But it also, to generate that score, you've got scores within each individual category within your data presentation. So there's two ways there that you can present that data, because you're either showing differences in the average score, or you're showing where in some areas the EQS score is a consequence of maybe litter. In another area with the same score, it might be a consequence of there's not as much litter, but there's dilapidated buildings, let's say. So, there's different things that different methods will show you. Okay, so think about these two options here. Which one would be the most appropriate for the examples that I've just been through there? So, what would proportional circles be good for? And what would this one over here, which is a polar area chart, be good for in terms of your different ways of presenting the data? Yeah, so these are the decisions you have to make, and you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. You can do both, yeah, as long as it suits what you're doing for your project. So all that a good kind of thing to aim for every time is, with a range of methods, don't use the same method for each piece of data. Yeah, so that means if you've done EQS and you've done whatever method, proportional symbols maybe, don't then do proportional symbols for your index of decay, for example. Do something else. Choose another piece of data. Even though it would be appropriate, you're not showing a range of skill. So I always say to my students, aim for at least 5 different presentation methods. That's a good starting point to aim for. You might end up doing loads more, but 5 is a good one to aim for them to be different. The other thing to think about is try to include And I know this is not a good way of thinking about it, but it does kind of help you get the marks. Try to include two higher level ones, yeah, at least two higher level ones. So I would say the more basic ones are this side here, which are like your bar charts, your pie charts, your line graphs. They're kind of more basic ones, and the ones over here, these are like your box and whisker plots, the triangle graphs, the kite graphs, things that show multiple things on the same chart and just look a little bit more sophisticated um, than your other data presentation methods. It really does help in terms of the higher level. But the other thing to think about, obviously, don't just be led by that. Be led by what best visually tells the story of what's going on in my data. How do I highlight to the reader very quickly what's going on and what trends can be identified in my data? And sometimes it's the case that your presentation method that you choose can reveal the pattern to you or reveal the trend to you. That can be another reason for presenting in a certain way. Like just by looking at the raw data, just by looking at the numbers, I can't see that there's a pattern. When I present it visually, then I'll be able to pick out a pattern visually. Okay, so there's just some examples of your higher level. So try and use like two of these. It's a really good idea to try and get those. And again, it's your responsibility to look at those. As I've mentioned before, using ArcGIS, this basically just means it can be something like this, which is proportional symbols on a map. Now, you would never do a study site of this size. This is just an example of how ArcGIS can be used. Um, your study sites will be a lot smaller than this. But it's essentially overlaying your data onto a map. So it gives you the spatial representation of the results that you're getting. And I'm going to cover how to do this in a separate video. Now, at this stage, it is worth pointing out that obviously when you were taking your data, when you were collecting your data, and it outlines this in the video, you must take, at each point you're taking some data collection, you must take your your GPS location. Okay, that's really, really important. So I'll do a separate video on that. Okay. Now, um, moving on from that then. So sorry, as an aim, do try to include some GIS. Yeah. Now, statistical analysis then comes after that. So you've got to the stage where you've taken your raw data and you've presented it visually, so you can see things. You know, you might be able to see, well, there's a bit of a trend there. Statistical analysis will then show you, well, what's the statistical significance of this trend? Yes, it is a trend, but how strong of a trend or how strong of a relationship have we got? We can numerically summarize that, the strength of that particular trend. And again, we can use this, use the resources that you've already got. So underneath your data presentation section on the RGS website is the data analysis stuff. So you've got the more simple ones at the top, go away, and then you've got your more complicated ones at the bottom here, which are Spearman's rank, chi-squared, Simpson's diversity. So read through those and work out what's going to be relevant to you. Again, your Barcelona Field Studies website is again really good. If you scroll to the bottom, so I'll just minimize the data presentation stuff. So if I go on statistical methods, there you go. It's got a number of different different statistical methods. So we do something like Simpson's diversity index. There you go. It's got the equation there. There we go. And it takes you through how to do this. And for some of them, it will, there you go. So for Spearman's rank, it will actually do the calculation for you and come up with your conclusion as well, which is a lazy way of doing it. But if the technology is there, why not use it and just make sure that you acknowledge that you've used this technology? Okay. Um, so yeah, very, very useful piece of kit for you to use. And then again, obviously, on your Field Studies Council website, they've got a data analysis bit just here. Yeah, so for a lot of us, we think, okay, I've got all this sediment data. What can I do? Yeah, so you can do very simple things like mean. You can do very simple things like size of fine sediment, like this. There we go. You can look at sorting. You can look at Zing's shape classification, index of sphericity, flatness index, roundness index. There's tons of different things that you can do with the same data, yeah, with the same data that you've got. Okay. So do look into that and think about what statistical tests are going to be relevant for my specific project. And with your data analysis, it's the same, yeah. So you can see. So when you the way to decide is when your raw data is presented, is there a visible pattern or trend, or is there a difference? So sometimes you're trying to prove there's a relationship. Sometimes you're trying to prove there's a difference as well. Different statistical tests will allow you to prove or disprove different things, which is what we're trying to do here. Yeah. And again, it's thinking with your presentation, aim for some of these being higher level if you want a higher level project. So over here, you've got your basics, like turning things into percentages, mean, mode, median. Over here, you've got your more simple one, your more complicated ones, your more sophisticated ones, higher level ones, which are like Spearman's rank, man-Whitney U, student's t-test, standard deviation, that will give you proof of things. Yeah, proof of things like proof that there is a statistical difference and it's not down to chance. Because sometimes, your data could just be coincidental. So we need to do a statistical test to think about, well, what degree of confidence can we have that this is actually, there's a causal link here. Okay, so for those higher level ones, just obviously always try to work out what is the appropriate one. Like, don't just do one for the sake of doing one. You've got to think what is the most appropriate one. So let's say it takes one like a Spearman's rank, for example. It's proof of a statistically significant relationship. So there's a relationship between two variables. Yeah, so it might be distance from city centre and environmental quality. Yeah, or index of decay score, and it will generate for you what's called a correlation coefficient. So it gives you a number, you put that number into a table, and then it will tell you, right, you can accept that this is a statistically significant relationship to a 95% degree of confidence. So you know it's not down to chance. Yeah. So the importance of that is obviously massive in terms of when we go on to drawing our conclusions and synthesizing, which is going to be very important for when we go on to the conclusions section, essentially. Now, in terms of a layout, this is basically a summary of how then you start to lay out the presentation and analysis section. So put your sub-question at the top, yeah, because remember your data is answering the sub-question. You put your graph, your chart, your visual, whatever that you've created from your raw data, and then underneath that, if there's an appropriate statistical test, put it underneath and you've got the results. That's phase one, okay? That's phase one of this. There will be a part two video which will go into how do we then write about all of this? How do we write academically about the results that we see in front of us? Okay. And the analysis in that respect is exactly the same as the analysis in paper three. So once you can get this skill right, you can also do really well in your paper three. All right. So that pretty much then concludes this part. So this is part one of the presentation analysis section. Part two will be like synthesis and then drawing our conclusions from the data that we've got. Okay, so big section. Yeah, big section, worth a lot of marks. Doing it well will help you get a higher mark in this coursework. All right, so I'll see you in the second part of this video.